if I tell my mom that I want to be a priest, I know she's going to send me to live with my grandma to go to the seminario. And she did. So one of the best years of my life was being 11 years old and boarding a plane and going to my hometown for a year to live with my grandma in a Catholic boarding school. And so, again, oh God, the church is so ingrained in my life experience. Like my grandmother's house, my mother's house where she grew up, has a corral, which is like this big backyard space where, you know, my grandfather would keep pigs, and there was like avocado trees and orange trees and lime trees. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Terraza?
Yeah, I know. So we have a wall, right? A stone wall. On the other side is the seminary and the church. So that's the church and the seminary I got to go to. And I remember the priest from the seminary actually came to do a sermon in Chicago, in Little Village.
Really?
And my parents were invited to come and attend, right? So they could meet the priest. And the priest announced, and we have one of your own in our seminary in Tepatitlan. And everybody clapped and cheered for my mom. And I'm sure like a million people.
You over there, little gay boy, stand up.
I wasn't there. I was still in Mexico.
Okay.
But so it was more like, you over there, mother of little gay boy, stand up, right? And I'm sure like the crowd went wild and claps. And I know my mom had like a million people go up to her after church to be like, you must be so proud. Qué inspiración, qué bendición. Yo quisiera que mi hijo también fuera sacerdote. Literally that same weekend, I got kicked out. I was getting expelled from the seminary because I hated it so much.
Doing bong rips.
No, I was too young for that. I was 11. More so I
plotting against the Mexican government.
No, more so I would get like a midnight craving and I would like jump the wall and go to my grandma's
Mijo,
house to
esta
watch TV.
casa es del PRI. I am your Dove AP. This is Dovewhether. Thank you for listening. I am coming at you live with a special guest.
Hey.
A new friend of the pod. A gentleman that has in his heart 4 ventricles big enough to develop a studio apartment that can go for anywhere in between $1,800 to $2,500. Of course, there's going to be a 3-month rent down payment if you want to apply. And but it's all taken up with the joy of tenants' rights, organizing around housing. He is someone who spent over 10 years in this world of developing a path for the people of the Chicago North Side being able to find a home that is dignified and clean and sustainable enough for them to build a actual life around the thing that all people want. I am joined by Christian.
Hey.
Welcome to the pod. I would sing your praises a little bit more here and there. I would talk about your legislative wins. I would talk about your bare knuckle fights against landlords. And I would go into how this man is blowing up on TikTok 6 months in.
Ooh, yeah.
Making numbers, hitting that, hey, I'm socially conscious, but I'm also hot on the internet. That's real popular. The future Mexican Soran Mandani. Welcome to Dovewhether, Christian.
Thanks for having me. I was really excited when you reached out. This is great.
Yeah, I was a fan of your presentation online. Very, very focused on like the issues here on the ground in Chicago, and very focused around housing, which is something that I don't speak too much about on the pod, but it's also something that I've been part of. You're a way more policy head than me, but that's because I'm first and foremost a dumb bitch. Sexy on the dance floor and even sexier on the mic.
Hey, There's many roles in a movement,
Mm.
and I would argue that the role you play is more important than a policy wonks because you're actually out there talking to tenants. I know you were doing a cookout
Yeah.
last weekend, treating some tenants who are working on forming a union with some of your grilling magic.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, don't discredit that. Like that's actually I think way more important than calling politicians or working on reports and shit. Like
And he's humble, y'all, but taken.
I am.
All right, Christian. So we share a lot in common, and I kind of want to sit down on mic and talk about the thing that we share the most in common, our love for tenants.
Yeah.
So I invited you to watch a little movie called The Tenant.
What a treat.
The Tenant is this movie from 1976. It is co-written and directed by known sex pervert Roman Polanski, and it stars him as well as Isabella Adjani as the love interest, kind of like the hot mommy figure that also mothers. There's also like some like big old silver age and golden age Hollywood actor Melvin Douglas as the landlord, and a whole bunch of different casts of people with inscrutable accents for Paris, where this takes place in a time where there's a lot of immigration into Paris due to World War II. And there's actually a housing shortage around this time for the previous 20 years. Just a lot of buildings were needed to be built to be able to house people. At this time, it went from something like 12 million apartments to 21 million apartments over the course of 2 decades. And in this approach, and Roman Polanski takes this approach of experiencing Paris growth and influx of immigrants in the disaster of World War II, and creates this very xenophobic, very psychological thriller about how much you should hate your neighbor. Or maybe how much your neighbors hate you, or maybe
You gotta watch our back.
backs.
Can't trust none of these people.
All right, Christian, tell me, what is your? Do you have any history with this movie?
This movie.
Yeah.
No, I actually heard about it the first time from you.
Okay.
And I didn't know what to expect. I'm, somewhat familiar with Polanski, and I know there's a lot of controversy, but I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. And honestly, that's the best way to watch a movie. I mean, I knew it was called The Tenant, so there's that umbrella theme there, but I didn't know if this was going to be a horror, a comedy, or a dramedy. But honestly, it was a wild ride, and I kind of enjoyed it.
I mean, that's good. I give you almost no background on this movie.
I preferred that. I mean, I'm the kind of person, when I go to the movies, I do not watch any trailers. Like, I want to be shocked at the movie theater.
Yeah. Now, I'm with you on that. I've been doing that way more. I used to be a big, movie film production, nerd, where, I would keep track of some stuff like that. Now I'm just kind of like, I don't even know what the new Mission Impossible is about, but I'm there. I'm sad.
Well, nowadays, I don't know what it is, but the people who make the trailers, they've just gotten so lazy. They reveal all the plot points, all the twists, to the point where I don't enjoy movies anymore after I watch the trailer. And I'm kind of a nerd, so I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I know it's problematic. I know it's propaganda from the CIA promoting a pro-military, pro-cop agenda. But holy shit, I mean, superheroes are hot and sexy, and they're fun. It's fun to watch them fight.
It's a good genre, being hot, sexy, and holding a gun on screen. Very, very good. If you're trying to do some class upward mobility, that's a good one.
Yeah.
If you could get it, take it.
Yep.
So you didn't know anything about it?
I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but immediately, I knew it was going to be worth discussing, and so this character, right, the main character,
Yeah, this guy, Tarkovsky,
super mid average chill dude,
just a fella.
kind of relatable. You know, he's just trying to find an apartment. He's trying to find a place to live. Seems like he's having a hard time finding that.
I don't really know too much about like this guy, but because the first scene in this movie is just him like talking to the concierge to try to get an apartment.
Yep.
But like from up top, yeah, I could say like this guy. There's almost nothing impressive about this guy.
Yeah.
Nothing really grabs you about his image or presentation.
Yeah, he's an average dude, and yeah, I mean, what an apartment that he's looking at. It's pretty gnarly. I mean, what, like, there's not even a bathroom in the apartment.
No.
But it's still 5,000 francs to just put a deposit in. So how timely.
It's so it really is a as things change, things stay the same, same as it
Yeah.
ever was type beat.
There's no original experience, is there?
Nothing new under the sun. And I think about this guy. You know, he's a kind of have like this nebulous age about
Yeah,
him.
maybe a 30 something. I don't know.
I feel like that's even too old.
Yeah.
I think he's being portrayed as like a young man.
Yeah.
Like literally like 21 to like maybe 25, 26. Something like a younger fella that is kind of new to
Kind of
living alone.
naive,
Mhm.
idealistic, kind of a good person.
A very like morally neutral.
In a live and let live way, right? And we were talking about Mexico earlier, and what's that famous quote from Benito Juarez? It's like, el respeto al ajeno es la paz, right? So that's kind of his mantra, like, live and let live, and I'm just going to stay out of the way. I appreciate that. I like neighbors who are like that.
Yeah, a nosy neighbor is like the least wanted neighbor. But I like how he's this kind of doormat.
Yeah.
He's walked upon pretty much the whole time by like the landlord, the tenants, the other tenants. He's kind of pushed around by the main love interest, like his friends. You know,
That's true.
he doesn't have like an internal strength or like a core to himself.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, you're right. He doesn't really have a point of view. He's just kind of reacting to life.
And the like moral neutrality that he takes is never about like he never like stands up for himself and like staying up for himself. There's moment in this movie where different tenants come in to be like, hey, can you like help me like stab Caesar in the back a handful of times? And he's like, Caesar hasn't done anything to me. You know, I don't have to hate this guy. You know, I don't mind stabbing people in the back, but not to this guy. And he also, like, he gets pressed by one of his tenants, one of the tenants there, where he has this like housewarming party, and it goes into the night. And then this neighbor comes in, knocks on the door, and says, "Why are you making this racket? Why are you making this racket, young man? You and your 40-something teenage adults need to like settle down and be respectful." And then he's like, it's perfectly natural to go late into the night on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's a housewarming. I mean, what the heck? Like, I'm gonna pay so much money to live in this shitty apartment. I don't even have a bathroom. Every time I look out the window, there's someone at the bathroom staring at me. And I can't even throw a party for myself. Like, what am I even paying for? And I think what struck out to me at the beginning, like with all his interactions with the concierge, with the landlord, with the other tenants, who all seem to be very suspicious of each other. Everybody seems to be in this like quiet war almost. And nobody I couldn't tell where people stood. Oh, what stuck out to me as this character is like interacting with the concierge and the other tenants and the landlord, is just how anti-life this whole system is. I mean, he's being told he can't have people over. He can't make any noise. I mean, some of the times when he's making noise, it's because he's reacting to something that hurt him, or and then that becomes a problem. So it's like we want you to pay all this money to live in this crappy apartment, but we want you to behave as if you don't exist for the most part, right? And I think it's interesting because the landlord says, he's trying to negotiate. Like, I have 4,000 francs cash, right? But you want 5,000 from a note from the bank. And the landlord's like, look, it's not about the money. Like, honestly, the 5,000 francs wouldn't even make a difference to me, he said, right? But he's still expecting. So that stuck out to me. And then of course, like, what does he learn when he moves into this apartment? That the previous tenant had, attempted to take their life, right? They jumped out the window.
And this is something that like hit me like a ray of light as soon as I saw this. The willingness of this guy that effectively comes from the streets of, like, sprouts from the cobblestone streets of Paris, looking for an apartment, finds it, learns that, like, the previous tenant is dying or dead, for all he knows, and is like immediately jumps into, well, I mean, her loss, my gain. And also, I'm happy to get, like, stepped on and give full price for this haunted ass apartment that I'm about to live in. And also, I'll keep all the furniture, all the wardrobes, all the clothing. Everything that she had is mine now.
Well, it's literally no time passed between this tenant tried to off herself and the landlord looking for a new tenant, because we're not human to landlords. We're just pieces of a machine that helps her profit motive run, right? And so nobody seemed to care in the building about, like, how this tenant was doing. And they were trying, the immediate reaction was to replace her so that the landlord wouldn't miss a month in rent, right? To the point where all her shit is still there.
Yeah. And like I don't think Polanski is the type of, like, housing rights guy that he's like, look at how evil landlords are. I'm just gonna have this landlord parrot the truth, which is, as you said, he doesn't care about the money. He has this space and it's vacant, so I'm going to fill it. And also, make sure to be nice and follow my rules and think about what you do, because we live in Paris in the 1970s, and getting an apartment is hard to come by these days, and I will kick you out.
Getting an affordable apartment, I think that's key, right? Because, later on, the main character, he's hanging out with his friend, and he's like, what a great apartment you have. And how are your neighbors? Like, are they messing with you? Because they're messing with me. And the guy has no idea what he's even talking about, because he has money. He's wealthy. And so he doesn't have to worry about nosy neighbors or being too loud in his apartment. He just has that freedom to exist without constantly feeling like he's walking on eggshells or he's going to do something fucked up that will lead to him being homeless.
And it's not even that guy, this, like, random party that he falls into because he's trying to get laid. Tarkovsky's trying to get laid. Like, we learned that this guy at this apartment isn't even paying for it. He's just
right. His brother's like in Peru for like a year.
He's doing the reverse Paddington, going from jolly old Paris to Peru, and then just has enough money to, like, spend all that time traveling, and also have his brother just hang out.
Yeah. So this ocean between them, right, in their lived experience, it's just, I was really struck by how anti-life navigating finding a home was, and how it really felt like, again, he was, like, excited to find an apartment, even though the previous tenant had tried to, jumped out the window, because scarcity forces poor people to compete with each other
Mhm.
and to see each other as the enemy. I need to get one up on this person. Throughout this entire movie, there's never any like collective consciousness or
No.
critique of a system. It's all just individuals trying to one up each other, except the landlord and the people who are aligned with the landlord. They have a class consciousness. I mean, I remember remember there's a scene where they're asking him to sign a petition against
Mhm.
the woman with her disabled daughter
Mhm.
being too loud, and he refuses, right? Because he has this live and let live mentality. And what does that nasty neighbor say to him? Like, "Where's your solidarity?" That
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
that really stuck out to me. Like, it it it's wild. Like the housing system in this movie, but also in real life, is so upside down that if you're someone who's saying, hey, maybe we should let people be and be in peace and make sure they have stability, like, you're the crazy person,
Yeah.
right? Because we're centuries in to this exploitative system that really just treats, again, it's anti-life. You just reduce humans to the economic relationship that they have with you.
And one of the items there in this whole interaction is this feeling of like isolation. So because the economic relationship from tenant to landlord is, I will kick you out as soon as I don't like you. Because how everyone needs housing. Everyone needs a place to live. Like humans don't grow a winter coat every winter to be able to survive outside. People need to be inside, have a home of some sort, dignified and clean and warm and feel big enough for them and the people that they live with. And due to that, like everyone lives in this precarity where the moment that you are not living the way that the landlord wants you to live, you're going to get kicked out. But the policing mechanism is this sense of isolation that the other neighbors put onto Tchaikovsky. Of course, it's a psychological thriller, so we don't really know if this is happening. But even in that, even in this like imaginary space of Tchaikovsky, and seeing these neighbors fight him and like force him to be quiet, and throughout this movie he becomes more and more quiet to the point that at a certain, like, he stops having people over. He doesn't even like curse people, and at a certain point, one neighbor, the neighbor that's getting ousted, and he refuses to help oust, comes in, and before she even knocks on the door, he can hear her footsteps and opens the door in anticipation, so he doesn't have to go through the pain of forcing someone else to make noise around him, and therefore him getting shat on. And that's just a policing mechanism that is sprouted from the unbalance of power of a landlord and tenant.
And it really stems from this core narrative in Western society that if you're homeless or if you suffer for any reason, that reflects a deficit on you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so clear in this movie because there is zero empathy for the previous tenant and how hurt she is and how much pain she is, right? And her life is over. All you hear is judgment and suspicion and rumors. And so again, it's just, again, reducing people to the profit they can provide
to the economic
landlord.
basis they exist in and can give out, or you could benefit from, or maybe even live out your own fantasies of squashing somebody else due to their economic isolation.
And almost the fear of being homeless is like equal to the fear of being judged by the other tenants and by society for being homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think that speaks to this dominant narrative that I think that's the challenge for our generation. I mean, this movie's old, but it's not that old, right?
Yeah.
And I think And that's really what my TikTok is about. It's challenging dominant narratives that no, when people are evicted or displaced or become homeless or die because they lack access to basic human necessities, it's not because they made mistakes as individuals. These issues are systemic. And so I think it's, where it's most disgusting and egregious and clear that we have this mentality of blaming individuals. It's definitely around the discourse around assault, right? And especially gender violence. Because how often do we hear, well, what was that person doing? Were they drinking? There's just a lot of discrediting of the victim. And I see that happening to victims of gender violence. I see that happening to people who are being evicted, people who become homeless. And I see that happening to people who are being deported.
And even here, like in the city that we live, and in a neighborhood that has so many eyes on, Logan Square, earlier this year, there was this big campaign created by the community to harangue CPD into doing something about this guy that was going around assaulting people. And a couple of months back, I went to this big manifestation in this bureaucratic CPD meeting in which the goal there was to say, we're serious about this, do your fucking job. And in that meeting, CPD and some of the like other government representatives were there, not making excuses, but doing the thing that you described, this smoke screen, this finger pointing of we can't get the rape kits done fast enough. That's a state issue. Why is it a state issue? Why does the state need to do it? Why would there need to be this barrier from local municipalities to state? Or, Chicago is one of the most surveilled cities in the world. And in this meeting, the white shirt, the one of the bosses in CPD, was talking about how much effort he's putting into trying to find this guy because he was jumping over fences to knock on doors so he can get people's Ring camera footage. And I'm like, what the fuck's all this surveillance for? If you have to go ask random residents, random tenants to do your fucking job.
And the incredible amount of money that is spent on these systems of surveillance, and we're not any safer for it. But again, we're conditioned to blame individuals for their oppression.
Mm-hmm. It's the precarity leads to an isolation. And what happens is there is further isolation being created here, not just due to Trukowski's falling into a psychosis. It's that he also starts these very strange behaviors, and very much directed to the love interest, Isabella Gini's Stella. So we know Roman Polanski. Like we live in the future of his past. Polanski is a French-Polish writer, director, actor, and he's a criminal pervert. He's highly acclaimed because of Rosemary's Baby and Chinatown. And in 2002, he directed The Pianist. And that won the Academy Award. This is after his conviction. He took a plea deal in 1977 for assaulting a child, a 13-year-old child. And even so, Harvey Weinstein's Academy gave this man a Best Directing Award, an Oscar for Best Director. And Adrian Brody won Best Actor. That was his first Oscar.
Oof.
And in 2025, I wish him hell. This fucker is 91 years old. bro, the devil is calling. Pick up. Like, say what you will about Emilia Perez's French director, Jacques Adard. And I say a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot to say.
But he isn't a sex criminal, which is a high bar to clear for a French director.
Well, it checks out. I mean, the way that glamorous character is written is just strange. Like, we meet her right after the main character goes to see the former tenant, and her whole body is in a body cast, right? And the nurse explains that she'd been in a coma for 2 days, I think. And she also says explicitly, like, don't talk to her, don't wake her up, because she's not well right now. She really shouldn't be receiving visitors. So of course, go ahead and see her with this other woman. But he pretends to be her friend so that he can see her and see what happened. And I imagine wanting to speak with her, but then her real friend is there, and that's this love interest character. And
maybe friend, or I think the movie implies that there's some sort of like lesbian relationship happening.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that. Cool.
Like, because Stella's not like, she gets asked by this guy that is squatting in his brother's apartment, like, he gets asked, like, how do you know her? And she says, I don't really knew her that well. There's almost this, like, sense that there might be, like, a little bit of cruising happening.
Oh.
And it just so happens that, like, in this relationship, like, well, she killed herself. At least that's a read to me. That kind of explains why neither... why it seems like no one really knows anything about Stella. Excuse me. What's her name? Joelle. That's why no one really knows anything about her.
Yeah, and that was one of the most disturbing parts of the film, is when they do speak to her and she wakes up and she's toothless.
And she just screams.
She just starts screaming in horrible pain. And then afterwards, these characters go to the movies and like fondle each other.
And this is how I know that like this movie is written and directed not through the perspective of a tenant or someone in the working class, but it's written and directed from the perspective of a member of the elite, like an ultra wealthy, like moneyed guy. And that's who Roman Polanski was at this time. This was after like he already had found success.
There's no social critique intended here, no class consciousness, but the housing system is so fucked up and such a caricature of itself that it can be totally read as one.
Mm-hmm.
Because these folks are not being ironic.
No.
when they dehumanize people this way.
And he falls into it. Like he by this point he had already like fame and money. And like he was, by the time this came out, Polanski was 43 years old. That's why him playing this young man, and even the landlord calls him a young man. And yeah, the landlord's like older than the fucking Appalachian Mountains, but like Polanski does not look like a young man in this. He acts it. He acts insecure and a little befuddled, but he does not look it. And Isabella Adjani was 21 years old.
Oh.
And that is how you can tell, or at least as a viewer in 2025, I can tell that this is written with the clear expectation of a patriarchal norms, and also the purgatory of Roman Polanski, and how that is like co-located with elite consensus of what a tenant is, and we both know how what the elite consensus of like a tenant is, which is like the landlord is giving you help, the landlord is helping you out, you should be lucky you're here.
We should be grateful for our oppression that
Mhm.
we even get to exist in the first place.
And it actually costs me money for you to be here. There is an economic divergement from my position to yours, and I've seen that.
Yes. I mean, throughout so many facets of society, the existence of poor people, like, is treated as a burden.
Mm-hmm. There was like a couple of years ago, there was this like rise in like nomenclature where people didn't want to be known as landlords. They wanted to be known as housing providers.
I remember that. That is insidious.
I think that's gone. I don't think if anybody's walking around calling themselves a housing provider, I think
I mean, they're also probably saying job creators.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's also part of the like elite consensus, where it's like all the rich and the powerful deserve to be up there, and it is only through their grace, only through the light they bring every morning as they're like flying across the sky in their chariot, pulling the sun, that the fucking dirty little fucking Mexicans in Chicago get to exist.
It's wild, and consistently, these are some of the dumbest people I've ever met.
So dumb. Foolish people.
It's just like, what is the point of having all that money and access and power if you're not going to like learn to be at peace with yourself and with others? I mean, I think of these gentrifiers in my neighborhood who have so much money. And again, it goes back to the landlord being like, I don't even need your 5,000 franc.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need your deposit. These people who are gentrifying our neighborhoods, displacing people of color, already have so much wealth. Like, what do you need more for? I just don't understand. And if I had that level of wealth, I would be in Thailand, you know? Like, I would be in
You'd be going from White Lotus to White Lotus.
I'd go do the whole White Lotus world tour. Heck yes. but I'd be enjoying the fuck out of my life.
Yeah.
And also trying to make the world a better place. I mean, billionaires used to build libraries.
Yeah.
You know, like, what the fuck are these billionaires today doing? Yeah.
And I bring this up because like the elite consensus is so visible here if you have a class analysis. I've read a lot of reviews and I've like seen a lot of like YouTube videos on this movie, and so many people are love to glaze this movie as an underrepresented masterpiece in the
God.
Polanski oeuvre. And I sit there thinking, bro, did you watch the movie that I watched?
Yeah.
Like, did you think about like the fact that like every single woman in this movie is either a crone or a sex bot? Like, did you think about how this tenants and the neighbors that all live under the same conditions somehow suckle up to the rich and the powerful as if that is the normal way of doing it?
Did you notice how this man losing his mind meant that he started to cross-dress and be more genderqueer? Like, that's pretty nasty stuff.
Which is like so evident in the approach that like the monocultured rich believe in. You know, there is no such thing as free gender expression or free sexual expression in the highest circles of money and power. You have to look like everyone else. You must act like everyone else. And in fact, if you are not that, you will be punished. And we live in a time where there are like these ultra wealthy, like power gays. Like one of them being like Besant, who's part of the administration, the current Trump administration, who I didn't know was gay up until I heard someone just mention it, and that's even before getting into the power gay final boss of Peter Thiel, where even in these guys that exist in the real world have to conform and suckle up to the fountains of power and that being the head of state or the other elite in their class.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're white before anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And they see gender liberation as a threat to white supremacy.
Yeah.
And that's why this administration is trying to come down so hard on trans people.
Yeah.
Because if you can be free enough to reject the binary, then you're simply by existing helping others see that they're free enough to reject all binaries,
Yeah.
including rich and poor, or powerful and no power, right? And so I do see again how this housing system, as it's portrayed in this movie, is anti-life, because any authentic expression is demonized and becomes a reason to remove that person.
Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate you bringing up this idea that, like, yeah, gender expression and like sexual liberation are a direct assault at like white supremacist, like patriarchal order, because we are seeing that. And also in the inverse, because this is written by someone with a lot of money and power, when you turn that on its head, when you look at it from the elite consensus, you see someone cross-dressing as a destruction of the natural way. And Polanski has no imagination and no ability to comprehend a life outside of the binary, because in this character, when he is fully dressed as a woman, looking at himself in the mirror with a leg up, being a sexual object, as a lot of the elite do to trans and genderqueers, he says the words, "I think I'm pregnant," as if that is the goal of like trans people, as if that is the goal of genderqueers, to be able to function in this biological essentialist way, and to be able to shit out a baby. No, it's not that. But it just shows how fucking weird this guy is.
Yeah, I think stories, movies, like they're an expression of a collective conscience, right? They're made to be consumed by the masses, and so in this movie is an extension of Western society, and so in this imagination, right? The main character is losing his mind. He's going through psychosis. He's what he's doing is deeply embarrassing,
Mm-hmm.
like both in the narrative inside of the film, but also for the spectator, for the viewer, right? Like, we're meant to feel embarrassed for this. Like, this is the worst thing that could happen to a man.
Yeah.
Is that they go so crazy they become, dressing up like drag queens, and so then you have these people who laud this movie as a masterpiece with this message, and meanwhile the director, like, what are they guilty of? And that's not seen as deviant, right? That's not seen as worthy of removing this director from this space or this field.
It's so accepted and so generally seen as like almost like a quirky thing about him that I've seen interviews where he's not like pushed on this. I've seen a couple of interviews with Polanski being asked about like things like age of consent, in the way that he casts it aside is like, oh well, I am he said that he's attracted to young women, to girls, to children. And the law is that like the age of consent is 12. And in this specific interview that I was seeing, he was in Germany, where he proceeded with his like predation. And he said, well, she was 15. In Germany, the age of consent at that time was 15. So it was within the law, as if that's what matters. Yeah. And this interview didn't do anything other than like push a little bit.
And what's happening with him psychologically when he writes and makes a movie where he's essentially pointing a finger at genderqueer expression and saying, look at how crazy that is. And this is like the worst thing that could happen to a man. And at the same time, I imagine psychologically that pointing of the finger helps him tolerate his own deviance.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually destructive to humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And extremely harmful. And so, and again, I mean, I think that's parallel to people in this current administration, the people who support them. I mean, these are people who are happy to see families torn apart for profit. They're happy to see state violence lead to the death of people of color.
Yeah.
But they point the finger at trans people and at queer people and say,
And immigrants.
y'all are fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but no.
Makes no sense.
It's projection.
Projection and in almost this...
And jealousy.
Yeah.
They wish they could be this fabulous.
When you look at this administration, ain't no 6 there, ain't no 7. It's 5 and below. It's an affordable
Dude,
store.
I just can't imagine being someone who can look at someone like these clowns and think that's the pinnacle of humanity. That's my hero. That's who I aspire to be. That's why I want to, that's why I want to give all my power and agency to. Like, that is so sad to me.
Foolish. Absolutely weird, like foolish behavior. The search for like the better teat to suck on, because that's all these people want. They want to be fed. And I don't like it. I don't like it. And this movie, like, shows it a lot in the housing structure. And so we live in the real world and we talk about the real world things, right? Well, some of the good things that happened during 2020 and beyond was there was this eviction moratorium. For the first time, the U.S. government looked at the tenant-landlord relationship and said, you know what, maybe the tenants gets one thing right now. And that was good because there was an actual invisible force killing people. So like not having to worry about becoming homeless was actually a very useful thing. That passed under the CARES Act in 2020. Mm-hmm. And this moratorium only existed for a couple of months, and it was only extended beyond and beyond by the CDC.
Yep.
And so during this time, like the U.S. government being a little useful to the tenant, well, that's kind of unfair to the landlords, no?
It's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, it shows clear as day that we don't have to live in a world with evictions.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is a better world possible, it's like within reach.
Yeah.
Like in our lifetime, right? And here we saw, again, with the unemployment insurance and how many people were prevented from becoming homeless because the government was willing to send them money every week so they could pay their bills. All that money is still there. Like all that money is collected every year. Mm-hmm. Like that money, it's not handed out to us. Like that's money you've been contributing into government for, through your work, through your labor. You're entitled to get that money back. That money should be helping you have stability and a good quality of life. But instead, it's more normal to give our public dollars away to billionaires for not really sure what, right?
Almost nothing. And I find that every time I see like that those taxes taken out, like I know that like it's gonna be useful. Like I am proud that I'm able to like labor in such a way that other people benefit too. And I think a lot of people feel this way. I think not the loudest people feel this way.
I think the majority of us.
And it shows that how the tenant is written in the perspective of the elite versus like what really normally happens, which is like neighbors, usually they just kind of like don't really like worry too much about each other. Mm-hmm. But in this despicable time of 2020, where the profits dropped and the U.S. government came in and was a bully,
right? That was the impetus, right? Someone
needed to fight that bully.
Yeah.
And I know that a champion was going to sprout up, and that champion came out of Alabama because the Alabama Association of Realtors took up the fight against the bully government. And
Bless their souls.
they fought the Alabama Supreme Court, and they lost. So you know what they did? These good folks,
The housing providers.
they mustered up the strength and they took this fight directly to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Wow.
And in their brief, they had a little bit of some choice words. So I want to read this to you. This is directly from the lawsuits taken to the Supreme Court by the Alabama Association of Realtors. This stay will prolong the severe financial burden borne by landlords under the moratorium of the past 9 months. Landlords have been losing over $13 billion every month under the moratorium. Will anyone think of the poor landlords? And the total effect of the CDC overreach may reach up to $200 billion if it remains in effect for a year. And due to the government's sovereign immunity, its inability to provide timely rental assistance, as in, daddy government, give me money, the judgment-proof nature of the tenants covered by the moratorium, that massive wealth transfer, and accompanying government sanctions unlawful occupation of the property will never be fully undone. Will no one think of the landlords?
Pobrecitos.
Will no one think? Will you light a candle for your landlord tonight?
I have a ritual ready to go for when I get home because this keeps me up at night. But you know, I hear this language all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just blatant gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
And what's wild to me, although I'm not surprised by it, is that there is a movement in this country that legitimately thinks of itself as progressive, that argues that if clowns like this had more power, that would solve the homelessness crisis.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is the...
I think his name is Governor Gavin Newsom.
It's this elitism, right? And so hear me out. Like, everybody in this country wakes up every day and walks around thinking it is a great mystery as to how we promote equality. How do we arrive at housing stability for the masses?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? It's a mystery. Nobody can solve this, right? Despite our unlimited resources, we've never had more knowledge than we do today. Technical skills and capacity to solve these complex problems. How do we solve poverty? Nobody knows. It's a great mystery. It's, we have to tweak this language in these bills, and we have to get this, we have to make sure this ballot reform goes through. And it's a big mystery. We just can't do it. Like, how do we solve poverty? Give poor people money.
True.
How do we solve homelessness? Give people free housing.
True.
We can afford it. And you know what? It wouldn't even be the first time that this country embarks on a mission to create and grow a middle class through housing stability programs.
GI Bill.
Exactly. But when someone's in Logan Square and they're trying to find a place to live, they have to compete. I'm talking about people who are immigrants, people who are working class and low income, right? Barely getting by. They have to compete with people from the suburbs for these apartments in Logan Square, right? Meaning people of color. Again, racism was legal up until 1968, right? People of color who've been subjugated by systems of oppression like the genocide of indigenous people, right? Like the stealing of 12 million Africans and bringing them to this continent against their will to exploit them for centuries. The people who have to live with the legacy of that, the impact of that, economically, materially, but also spiritually, have to compete to live in a community with people who were able to hoard power, wealth for centuries during the same time. And so, there's a conversation around homeownership and the wealth gap, the racial wealth gap in Chicago. And it's stark. The average white family in Chicago has more than $100,000 in wealth compared to a black or a brown family. I think a Mexican family might be at I think I saw 30,000 in wealth. And then this is so fucked up, but according to this report, black folks have zero, right?
Yeah.
On average. And so there are people who say, well, the way white people were able to have so much wealth today compared to people of color is home ownership, access to home ownership. But that's not really true. And I think we as people of color have to ask ourselves, do we really want to aspire to have the incredible, unimaginable wealth that white people have today in this country? Because what would it take to have that wealth? What did it take for them to have that wealth? Genocide, enslavement.
And continuous from day one up to this moment and up to the moment this episode is released and weeks after that and years after that. Hopefully not too long.
Hopefully not too long.
In this gap, this disparity is protected by a million different hands in a million different ways. There's no, there's actual big villains like Robert Moses, who are who should be seen as true horrors of the American mind. But it's, for the most part, it's a million hands finding a way to push this disparity. And one of them is realtors, people that make their money selling this inelastic good of housing that everyone needs.
But there are housing providers. What would you do without them?
Well, the Supreme Court agrees with you. They after this retail association took it to the Supreme Court. They were the Supreme Court was yeah, bro, you've been so maligned. These retweets are actually so mean, and you actually deserve not just a little treat, but we're going to give you back pay for this little treat.
Dude, this oppression is so normalized that just calling it out, just naming what we can all see with our own two eyes is oppression to these folks.
Absolutely. And they gloat about it. This realtor, the group, they had a press release in which the lines, the immortal lines they wrote is the unilateral ability of a trial court judge to create law from the bench, overturning years of property law precedent and depriving owners of their private property is a threat to all property owners and real estate developers in Alabama. This is the same right-wing language that is being used everywhere. The same tone. These woke judges making laws that prevent me from deporting 500,000 Venezuelans that I give temporary protective status. It's fucked up. It's not even a panoply of voices. It is one unified voice that says you're lucky that I don't kick you out.
Talk about solidarity.
Oh my God,
those folks are united, right? Well, I was just gonna say, I think about the main character and how all the tenants in the building kind of turn against him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to the point that he fears for his life. He really thinks these tenants are all trying to kill him, right? And so I think a lot about assimilation, and I think about the discussion we just had around the incredible wealth that those in power have, and what it took to get there, and I think the deep shame of not being in that circle,
Yeah.
right? And so to the point where, in this building, all the tenants are being, all their humanity is being reduced to their economic utility for the landlord. But they're all so united against each other, against not wanting to be the next one that gets cast out or the next one that has to jump out the window. Because we've really been socialized to aspire to be the landlord and not necessarily to aspire to be free.
Yeah. And and I think that's why this busybody that created this petition to kick out this mother and daughter out, sees
Because she's
herself
being so
aligned.
loud because she has a disability
Yeah.
and is missing a leg, right?
And she sees herself aligned with the landlord, disturbing the peace that the king himself has provided in his space. And I appreciate bringing that, because it is this sense of assimilation, this sense of retribution and policing done by people of one class for the benefit of the people above. And I just connect it back to real life. I talk about this realtor group because when you look at it, very much as what we said, just losers. The Alabama Realtors, they have an annual conference, and they're having one this year. Look at Go Realty Go, and it looks like an absolute banger. This year, the location is this golf resort and spa, very swanky, very nice looking place. It doesn't even look like a plantation. It just looks like it went beyond that, to nouveau riche status. And it's 3 wonderful days of activities and programming. On the first day, you can take part of a cornhole tournament for 6 hours. And then the rest of the day is getting drunk and passing out awards. The next day, you get to learn how to use ChatGPT to develop your personal brand.
All for $10,000. I wonder how much these tickets are. Jesus.
On day 3, you get to leave by noon because the grind never stops. This conference is filled with nothing. There's nothing to do in this conference.
It's just filled with the most miserable, angry dorks in the world. And I resent that I can't even respect our oppressors. I wish I could admire your your evil, your tenacity, your creativity, but y'all are just brute and evil.
Yeah. At least Darth Vader can fight.
You know what it is? I truly believe that the folks who would go to a conference like this are just people who feel so small, so powerless, and they're just so terrified of death. And instead of sitting with that fear, that emptiness, they just want to take and take and take and promote themselves as victims, right? Of not being able to do whatever they want because these pesky poor people keep leveraging government to protect their own interests against ours, even though their interest is to what? To charge people as much as humanly possible to be able to exist.
And instead of taking that money and just shaking your ass day in and day out at the golf resort and spa, it makes no sense. Yeah. So I mentioned 2020 and I mentioned this court case because there was other things happening in 2020. Things that that year has been not just black bagged and disappeared. It's been erased from the history books. No one wants to think about that year.
But it's exactly, especially the elites, because again, this deficit, right, in social programs that help us have a basic human quality of life are so achievable. They're within reach. We saw them.
Yeah.
Right? And so they really want us to forget that. They really want us to turn on each other.
And they want to forget some other stuff too, because in 2020 there was a little bit of this kind of like government assistance was bound across every level of the social economic stratum, and one of those was, well, the PPP loans.
Oh yeah.
So
Those
many
famous
loans.
PPP quote unquote loans.
Yeah. And like I'm a little bit of a mischievous guy, a little bit of a hound.
We need that in the movement.
I was looking at this conference where like these people get to like give themselves awards and not even have like gay sex in the bathroom. Like truly, like what fun are you having? Just
Give themselves awards.
yeah. No, this is there's an award ceremony, and I saw the sponsors, some big sponsors. One of them being Pritchett Moore Inc. from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They're a realty group. They seem to be focused on like student housing, but like they do management and some other stuff. I read through their website. It was an ugly website, and I got this like little feeling that maybe I should look up this Pritchett Moore Inc.
Okay, intuition.
on these PPP loans. And you want to take a guess of how much they got?
Ooh, I love a pop quiz.
Because they did get money.
Of course. Let's say 50 million?
50 million.
I don't know. I'm just
Hey,
doing
that's
shots in
Saudi
the dark
money.
here. What?
50 million is a lot, but it was that level of like benefit from the government to these like to the elite. They received $534,000.
Oh, this one group.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
They received that much in PPP loans, and it was forgiven in 2021. How nice.
Ah.
It was so nice.
Well, but what about the student loans? Like, can't forgive those.
Well, if you took out the loan, you have to pay it.
Yeah. It's just
I don't make
rules
the
of
rules.
life. We don't make the rules. Sorry.
Mhm. Yes, you fucked up by trying to become a doctor. The fuck? You should have learned how to code. Yeah, and these PPP loans, they were forgiven. And like the pumping heart of the American economy, the small business kept going. It kept going. This all went to like payroll assistance. So this company got to pay its people somehow. We don't know how they got paid. We don't know who got paid, but they got the payroll, and they were able to move on from 2021 into 2025, where they got to sponsor the cornhole tournament.
Oh, wow.
Woo! You
So
want to
happy
take a
for them.
guess about how much you need to pay to become a cornhole tournament sponsor?
Oh, God. Is it like $500?
$5,000. You pay $5,000 to become the premier cornhole, the Alabama Realtor Annual Conference cornhole tournament
Oh, my God.
sponsor.
I wonder if you can write it off in your taxes.
I
Like,
don't-
is this a nonprofit or? I don't,
If you got a good accountant,
yeah.
there is a $500 one where like your name is just on one of the like cornhole like boxes. So you were right.
Okay.
You were right. It's like for such a like pittance, you get to like brag that you're part of in your little in group of weirdos.
Oh, geez.
Christian, I really appreciate you coming into this podcast of mine, Dovewhether. It was a joy talking about the movie Tenants. It was not a joy reading about the weirdos that made it, and also the real life weirdos that like effectively provided the point of view. But you brought this heat, and this joy and this knowledge. And I really appreciate you bringing that into Dovewhether. You hit the Dovewhether theme
Hey.
and logos and pathos and ethos
Heck yes.
perfectly.
Heck yes.
So thank you for being here.
No, it's an honor. I'm so happy to have this experience, and now I get to call you a friend.
Yeah. I will have your socials linked below.
Wonderful,
Follow
thank you.
Christian.
Yes, follow me on TikTok, Intersectional Urbanist.
And you want to make sure you follow him. He very recently took the last helicopter out of the Willis Tower because there was a massive protest.
Dude, there was nothing going on outside. I was so disappointed.
He's a little bit of a refugee, and so like you want to make sure you follow him. And you can follow us, Dovewhether, everywhere: Instagram, YouTube, your mom's phone. Like, we are everywhere at Dovewhether. And now, if you excuse me, Christian and I, we're gonna scrounge up $5,000 to become the 2026 cornhole tournament sponsors. So,
Oh, wait.
thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.